I've had the opportunity to read, I guess you'd call it a handful of pretty good books about different aspects of World War I. Books by Barbara Tuchman, Margaret Macmillan, Neil Ferguson, real good one by Max Hastings. The only single volume history of the entire war that I've read was by John Keegan, and that was primarily oriented towards military matters, in particular the role of artillery. And I'd say it's exactly what you'd expect from a professor of military history at Sandhurst. But now, more recently, I've read this book by G.J. Meyers, A World Undone, in which what he tries to do is to cover the entire war, all aspects of it, from the assassination of Franz Ferdinand up to the Treaty of Versailles. And quite frankly, that is a lot of ground to cover. I think there's a benefit in one-volume histories like this, and that is that you get to get a sense of the overall flow of what was going on during that war. You get to see the ebb and flow of in these battles, the shifting advantages, and you get to see the gradual deterioration of various parties, particularly the deterioration of Russia, Germany, Austria-Hungary. You get a really good feel for that. Now, the disadvantage of a single volume history is that it really has to oversimplify. I mean, Meyers is doing this in 700 pages, got a huge amount of ground to cover, and he is definitely going to oversimplify things. Now, what's unique about this single volume history is the inclusion of what he calls background chapters. Now, what he does is every time he's got a chance where there's a kind of a natural pause in a military campaign or a bunch of troop movements, he introduces little chapters that are sort of essays about different things. For example, the personalities involved, economic questions, things about military technology, and all that kind of stuff. And what that does is to really provide a context for understanding the main narrative of the war. I think one of the strengths of this book is the attention that Meyers pays to the various personalities that were involved. Now, that's also turns out to be one of the main criticisms of the book. And the criticism is this, that when he's talking about these personalities, he's buying into this theory of the war that's called lions being led by donkeys. In other words, that the common soldiers were really very capable, brave men, and that they were being led by a bunch of idiotic general leaders. I don't think that's really fair. I'm not sure it's really true. What he does, he presents pictures of these guys, their personalities, and they're not particularly favorable, but I'm not going to say that they're totally unfair. His real emphasis is on the disagreements, the arguments, the backbiting, the arrogance of these guys, the conflicts within the leadership groups that led to total disasters on the battlefield, and in many cases accounted for a lot of the casualties that were involved. Meyers has a writing style that's pretty clear and very, very well paced. He doesn't jump into a lot of arguments the professional historians seem to like to argue about. What he does instead is to report what happened and then leave it up to the reader to draw conclusions about whether there's fault to be laid and where to lay it and so on. Really, I think, a very fair job. One of the takeaways that I got from this book that I didn't have before was the impact that war propaganda had on the difficulty involved in eventually making peace among the participants. I just didn't appreciate it. And having read this, I think Meyers really contributed to my understanding of what was going on. So on the whole, I think this thing is a very fair presentation of World War I as a whole. I quite frankly recommend it. It's a commitment to read it. This thing is 700 pages long, but I think the effort is very well worth it. I'll see you next week.